she was gonna keep. Oh yeah, alright, take it easy baby, make it last all night. She was an American girl.
This is Deborahcratic, a podcast where we sit down with everyday Americans and hear their extraordinary stories. I'm your host, Deborah Drucker. Come along with me as we discuss those things that we were always told not to talk about: politics, religion, and more. I promise you'll be inspired and have your mind opened by the end of this episode.
Well, it was kind of cold that night. She stood alone on the balcony. Yeah, she could hear the cars roll by out on 441, like waves crashing on the beach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Deborahcratic. Today on Deborahcratic, we are going to get to know Yale Scott. Yale is politically active and has worked with both the George W. Bush administration and the Barack Obama administration. Yale is a father, a husband, a philanthropist, and a volunteer. He is just an all-around great guy. And today we have the privilege of finding out how Yale became the wonderful person that he is. Hello, Yale.
Hello. How's it going? Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're with us today. I'm so happy to meet you here virtually.
Yeah, it's great meeting you too. I feel like I know you, but we haven't met personally.
I know, but I feel like I know you too. You're an interesting person to watch on the socials. I know that you're a Southern Californian now, but where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Oklahoma, Edmond. It's a town north of Oklahoma City. And I went to Oklahoma State and then moved to DC after I graduated college.
And who did you grow up with in Oklahoma?
I grew up with my parents and my brother, who's 2.5 years older than me. I also have a half brother that's 9 years older than me. He was always in Texas with his mom, but I have two brothers, and everyone's still where they were when I left them.
What was that home life like there in Oklahoma?
The town I grew up in, Edmond, it's a nice town, middle class. Was fortunate to go to really good public schools and had a pretty normal upbringing. I was active in student body, was student council president, and then went to college after that and was in a fraternity. So I kind of was doing the whole what you do as a kid growing up there in the Midwest. Of course, now my life is a little bit different than what I probably would have thought my life would have been at that point. You know, I thought I was going to get married to a woman and have a family. And then when I came out to myself, I realized that that wasn't going to happen. But then I still kind of thought I was not going to be able to have a family because all the gay people I knew didn't have a spouse and kids. And so now I'm thankful kind of to fast forward, you know, realizing that that could be a dream and that could be a reality.
And it's a beautiful thing. I've seen your daughters and they're just phenomenal. And you're such a wonderful parent from what I witness on the socials. And they just seem so precocious and confident and just beautiful. So congratulations to you. You seem like a wonderful parent. Do you think you model your parenting after your sort of upbringing?
I do. You know, I have an F-150, which throws a lot of parents off at my daughter's school in West Hollywood. I listen to country music still. Our oldest, her thing now is requesting Reba McEntire instead of McIntyre on Alexa, which is hilarious to me. I model some of the things, you know, my dad was the calm one. My mom was the one we were kind of scared of, you know, to get spanked. And I think with my mom and her upbringing as a dad that was a football coach and 3 older brothers, you know, she was kind of the one that we were more intimidated by. I do see a lot of myself in my mom. And when it comes to parenting, she was fun to be around. One thing I think of her often about is when we go to the store, I only let our oldest daughter pick out one thing. And that I remember was annoying to me as a child, but now I get it. So I always recommend, you know, if you do that as a parent, the 99-cent store is your best friend.
When did you come out to your parents?
I was 26 And it was pretty dramatic. I think they've always known, but you never know until you ask. And then my mom asked, and it was a rough time. They didn't come to my wedding, and there were a lot of other things that built up to that. Now looking back, it was hard. I'm not bitter. I understand where they were coming from.
You said that it was a religious household.
Yes, we went to church. My mom grew up Baptist, my dad Episcopal, so Methodist kind of met in the middle. They never really shoved religion down our throats. I think, if anything, I was more religious in the fact that I was more active with youth group and things like that. So I know in some aspects, it probably confused my parents even more that I was, air quote, gay, but I was religious. And I think that probably is what made it harder for them to accept.
So it wasn't exactly the religion that caused them to be unhappy or confused by your sexuality. What do you think it was that caused it to be so complicated when you came out?
I think, having grown up in Oklahoma for both of them, it's just out of sight, out of mind. If you don't really know gay people, or if you have a weird gay cousin and that's all that people always said, when you have kids, things will change. And I didn't think they would. I was hopeful, but they did. And they met my daughter at the same time they met Bobby, my husband. I think it really just got to a place where I just had to kind of step back and just hope that things got better and they would come around. I stopped trying to send emails and write letters and convince them. And actually, when I did stop, that is when things did change, in coinciding with having children.
I'm so happy that it came around for you. So when you were growing up in that home, were politics something that was discussed at the kitchen table, or was there political affiliation in that house?
They were discussed, but a lot of it was led by me. I'm a recovering Republican. I always say, when you know better, you do better. Growing up in Oklahoma, that's really all I knew. And so I think I actually probably gave my parents more interest in politics. Of course, this was pre-Fox News, and really the whole conversation of politics didn't always come up unless you knew that your family members agreed with you, where now it almost seems to be the opposite. You want to bring that up if you know that it's going to cause some drama. But, I was always really interested in politics. I wrote President Reagan when I was 4. Now it's a family joke, but my brother wrote Gary Carter, who was a famous baseball player. I thought he wrote Jimmy Carter, and I got jealous that he got a response back. And so I had written Ronald Reagan because I was 4 at the time. I was born in 80, so it was 84. And that's really what kind of sparked my interest in politics. And, I volunteered on campaigns growing up. And I even, one time during the 92 election, Bush, Perot, Clinton, literally called 100 people random out of the phone book, created my own poll, called the local NBC affiliate, and they came out to interview me about my poll and the results. At the time, I thought that was normal. Of course, I was probably the only kid in the country doing that.
And from there, your political aspirations were born, huh?
I don't think I'll ever run for office, especially now that the climate's so toxic. So I feel like I'm better behind the scenes. But yeah, I think that's definitely where my interest began. In college, I interned at the White House. So I took off the second semester of my junior year, interned for the George W. Bush administration. I stayed over the summer. I started doing advance work as a volunteer, which is where you travel or you volunteer in advance of a principal coming. And with that, it gave me, that on my resume to then move back to DC after I graduated college to work at, the White House and State Department. But really that kind of helped catapult me into that position.
And at this point, you're considering yourself a Republican.
Yeah, I'm still a Republican. Yeah.
Okay. And so did George W. Bush have a good sense of humor? I've always been curious.
And he still does. Yeah. I mostly did advance and interacted more with Mrs. Bush. I got to travel internationally for her as a volunteer, even when I worked at the White House, because that was never my actual job doing advance. But I was fortunate to have bosses that allowed me to still volunteer. I think I traveled over 20 countries for her and went in advance to plan the trips. You're there usually with Secret Service and the whole team on the ground planning all the logistics before they arrive.
And so when you did the internship, you're what, about 18?
No, I was 21 when I interned. I
Okay.
had 4 jobs in government. My first was at Department of Education, traveling for the secretary. So kind of the same thing I was mentioning before, going in advance, planning trips to an elementary school or a commencement address. And then I worked at the White House in the Freedom Corps office, which was created after September 11th to encourage volunteerism, as the assistant to the director. And my third job was still at the White House at the visitor's office, which plans all the public events, all the tours, Easter, Christmas. I was in charge of all the volunteers for the Easter egg roll. We did the 4th of July, basically any big South Lawn event in tandem with the social office.
And you're still very engaged with the White House because I saw you on the lawn during the Easter egg hunt.
Yeah.
With your daughter.
Yeah. So kind of through that, when President Obama was in office, I helped all 8 years of that administration for the egg rolls and a couple of the other like garden open houses and tours and things like that. Because 4 of those 8 years, I still lived in DC before I moved to LA, but flew back even for those last 4 years for the egg roll every year. I think I volunteered minus the Trump years at every egg roll since 2002. So, I definitely can tell you anything you want to know about the Easter egg roll.
Well, so back to your founding, political career. At what point do you work for the next president?
Yeah, so I worked, 4 jobs. My last job, I left the White House and actually went to the State Department and protocol. So the Office of the Chief of Protocol. Protocol, a lot of people don't know about unless maybe you've seen the Goldie Hawn movie where she was the chief of protocol. But basically, they run and they're overseeing all the delegations that go out throughout the world. Really, if like the president can't go on a delegation, there will be a delegation that will be in place of him or hopefully her one day. And they also run all the ambassador accreditations. So I think there's 186 embassies and ambassadors to the U.S. So we work on all of those accreditations. So we would do the ceremonies for that at the White House. And technically my last day was January 20th, 2009. But a lot of people don't realize President Bush was really big on a transition, which was not the case, as you can imagine, with the last transition. Every office had to create books and binders and meet with the new administration. And so with that, I was given the opportunity to meet with really the visitor's office for President Obama. The director there kind of just took me under her wing and really wanted advice on what we did and how that worked. And to the point where she was like, will you come back? That was the first egg roll because Easter always falls different times of the year. I mean, it was really early in the first year of the Obama administration. So I came back and helped run basically the whole egg roll component and really did that for all 8 years. In that time, though, my politics was changing. I voted for President Obama, and it's kind of a running joke now that there were more gay people that worked for President Bush than worked for President Obama because it's very entertaining. There's a lot of, people. And of course, the time was different then. President Obama, Secretary Clinton, they were all opposed to gay marriage, at that point.
I didn't realize that the Liberal Party was, or the Progressive Party.
I always really credit that to President Biden. I think it was an interview where he came out for gay marriage, which really forced the Obama administration to take a stance.
Oh, that's right. When he was the VP, he was a real proponent of gay marriage. God bless Joe. So what was the catalyst for you to change parties? Was there a specific thing?
Yeah, I mean, the gay marriage really was the one main issue. Again, Obama and Clinton in '08 didn't support gay marriage. So, I wouldn't say I was technically a Democrat at that point. Moving to LA, obviously helped kind of open up my perspective. But DC is a super liberal town too, but it still is pretty conservative in some ways. But I would probably say that's the one issue.
Okay. And do you think this is the direction now for the Republican Party to be so far and so extreme? Do you think that's the future of this Republican Party? Or do you think there's a moderate, centrist, more old school Republican Party the way we knew it to be?
If it ever comes back, it'll be a long time. It's just really sad that they've allowed Trump to take over the party. I mean, it's a joke. It actually is embarrassing that they don't see past it. I mean, he's a former Democrat who gave money to Planned Parenthood and saw a path, and he's just running with it. Now I think he lies so much that now he lies to himself to where he thinks it's maybe the truth. I don't know. But he, unfortunately, has really hijacked the party, and it's going to take a long time for them to recover.
So next up, I wanted to ask you about, it looks like you spent some time traveling to Haiti. What was the impetus for that?
Yeah, after obviously the unfortunate circumstances in Haiti, there were a few people that I knew that were doing relief work, including actually Mrs. Bush did quite a bit of work there at the time after it happening. A lot of that too, bringing President Bush and President Clinton together, both Bush 41 and 43. My heart was really torn seeing what was going on there and being so close. It's a flight from Miami. And at the time, I went 3 times. It was an orphanage tied to also a medical clinic. There was a doctor that ran that orphanage. I had some amazing trips. Looking back, I can't believe, I would ride on a motorcycle with a stranger to the airport on the way out. And we had a lot of crazy scenarios where we would be pulled over by the police. And one time I was actually hiding in the truck. I didn't have my passport with me. I had a lot of close calls while I was there, but super rewarding. And, I always look back at those photos and actually have a few friends on Instagram. They're still there and try to stay connected with them.
Was that the greatest natural disaster you'd ever seen, that earthquake?
Yeah. Personally, I've been to India and on the border of Burma to refugee camps and things like that. But yeah, this was like nothing I'd ever seen before.
I have never seen anything like it. I did once volunteer to clean up Joplin after the tornadoes that flattened Joplin. It was like someone dropped an atomic bomb. It was horrific.
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine, because the scale, the magnitude of that devastation was tremendous.
It's just sad because they're such a good people. There was one girl, we almost named our daughter after her, Sandlove. And I think of her all the time. If I could have brought her back, I would have. At the time, I lived in a tiny little studio in DC, so it wouldn't have even made sense. But she just really tore on my heartstrings, as all the kids did. But we really had a connection.
What do you think informs this humanitarian, empathetic perspective that you have? Was it at all through your religious affiliation, or is it just your nature to be so kind-hearted?
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I think it does probably play a part in the fact that I grew up in the church. I always like to say I wasn't religious. It was more of a relationship for me at the time, with Christ, and that whole kind of relationship, accepting Christ as my savior and all that. Now looking back, I don't really know what I am and where I stand. I know that Jesus was a good person and was here, but Noah's Ark and all that, Adam and Eve is crazy to me. So, I will say though, I think I am probably the person based on that. A lot of the reason why is because when I was in youth group in high school, I went to Mexico on a air quote mission trip, which is comical to me now that we were there to share Christ to Catholic people who know about Christ. But I remember those trips, I helped pull teeth with the dentist that was there, and these women were getting their teeth pulled with no numbing or anything. And I went to Nicaragua a couple times in college. And I think a lot of those trips helped me because it wasn't like I was really there to get people to accept Christ. I think in turn, I got more out of those trips than really I gave.
Well, it's a beautiful thing. So what I'm gathering here is that you're not really raising the kids with any religious faith.
No, my husband's Persian. He grew up in Iran, moved here when he was 3, Muslim, because there's a big distinction between Jewish Persian and Muslim Persian, which I had no idea about. Oklahoma, I knew one Jewish person, went to his bar mitzvah in 3rd grade, and then I wanted to be Jewish because I wanted a party.
It's a great party.
Yeah, exactly. I can't wait for our daughter's friends to start having bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. But I will say I admire Bobby, my husband, a lot because he has told me a few times, if you ever want to go to church, if you ever want, to take the girls, I'll go, which speaks a lot to him. And I appreciate that because I think he really can appreciate my upbringing. I do feel like that kind of upbringing has made me become a better person.
Well, it seems like you walk within those lines of do unto others and be charitable and compassionate. I also wanted to ask you, what is your husband's political perspective?
He's Democrat. I think he's always been. He's super liberal. I think as an immigrant too, you can appreciate being here, but also see the big picture. I think he was drawn to me because of my background in politics. He loves going back to the White House for things and going to events when we help co-host here in LA. And he's always shocked at when I say, oh, I knew that person, like I know Sarah Huckabee or I knew this person or that person. They're on the news. He's like, what? You know that person? There was even a time at the beginning when Biden won, we were talking about me possibly, being bi-coastal, applying and working at the White House under the Biden administration. And with COVID, and they were slow to hire because of that. And then obviously us planning on a second child, it didn't work out. But he's just always been very supportive.
What do you feel about the job the current administration is doing?
I am a big fan of President Biden, and I get frustrated when people think that he's too old or he's not doing a good job. I just don't think that he's probably getting the credit that he deserves. I will say when it comes to age, that's why he is adding so much to the job, is because of his age and wisdom. And if you talk to people that work at the White House or around him all the time, he's not losing his mind. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's got this chess game in front of him, and he's knowing what parts to move and how to negotiate, what world leaders to talk to and how to talk to them. Of course, there are things that they could do different. Every administration's that way. But I do feel that he is the right person for this time in history. And I can't imagine if Trump was still president, especially with what's happening right now in the Middle East. It would be insane.
What do you feel in the you were interning for the Bush administration. You had a job with the Bush administration. Then it was the Obama administration. And then the Trump years. Did you just kind of check out of politics altogether?
I didn't check out of politics, but I didn't go to the White House. I actually was asked to help that first egg roll. And it's like, no, I can't. I can't be seen there and I can't physically be there.
Let's go to something more fun. What do you do for fun?
A lot has changed since having kids. I will say now for fun, probably working out or going running or just like going to McDonald's for a Diet Coke brings me joy. We're pretty active skiers in the winter, going to Mammoth. We love going to the desert, to Palm Springs. Both our daughters, we started swimming at 7 weeks, so love swimming and being outdoors with them. But I would probably say just really anything, being active, back in the day when I was single and even when we were married with no kids, there was constant birthday dinners and weddings and going out, doing all that, which we still do. But when you have kids and when you have a family, your focus shifts. So sometimes just like a Friday night where we could put the girls down and watch the Housewives of Beverly Hills with a glass of wine is my ideal night now, which I never would have thought I would say that 10 years ago.
I love it. And I wanted to say that I have noticed that you attend a lot of music events, and I saw that you also, I'm really impressed by the fact that you could ski in a flag Speedo. That was really awesome.
Yeah.
And I commend you for having your oldest at a parade, and she had these little American flags, and she was handing them out to everybody on the parade route. And I thought to myself, nice way to take the flag back. And I wanted to ask you about that. How do you feel about the flag somewhat being accosted for the Trumpelkins, as I put it? How did that happen to our flag?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate they've kind of hijacked that, but I think there is a way to bring it back. We have an American flag outside our house. And I remember during the last election, Donald Trump Jr. posted a picture, saying you never see a Biden sign with an American flag. And I was quick to take a photo of our Biden sign with our American flag. I think hopefully that'll change, but I, have an F-150 and had a Biden bumper sticker. I'll have another one next year, but I definitely have been given the finger, run off the road. And the hate is real. But we can't really let that take the place of the fact that Democrats can be patriotic too. Unfortunately, when issues come up, like the kneeling during the anthem and things like that, the Republicans always run with that, especially now with trans athletes. And there's so many things that they just take one little thing, run with it, and then try to scare voters. But I think, having our daughter at the 4th of July parade, there's no reason why she shouldn't be there. And she wanted to hand out flags, and it was super cute.
That was so cute. So, Yale, you have these two beautiful daughters, you and your husband. And how did that come to be? Is that part of this egg hatch donation and surrogacy program?
No. So I started working at Hatch after we had our first daughter, but we knew we wanted a family. We also looked into adoption, but we did the surrogacy route for both our daughters. Generally, how it works, most gay couples will do it this way. Now, there are a lot of single intended parents out there doing this journey as well. But we had a donor that we don't know. We know everything about her, all her photos and everything. But we had a donor fertilize half of the eggs with me, half with Bobby. And so with that, you create embryos. Of course, I didn't know anything about how any of this worked before we did this process. And now I kind of, obviously work in this industry as an intended parent coordinator. So doing Zoom consults with intended parents, whether it's a straight couple or a gay couple or a single person looking into having children via surrogacy or egg donation. Because a lot of women are able to do egg retrievals and create embryos but not carry, or they try to carry and can't, and that's why they go the surrogacy route. Of course, adoption is great too. I have a lot of friends that have adopted, but we met with a few adoption agencies, and the California laws are still a little crazy with, how many days up until like a family member can come back and take the child away and things like that. So we wanted to go the surrogacy route, and we're obviously very thankful. We're a family of 4, and nothing's more rewarding than being a parent. And everyone said it would be that way, but really until you are a parent, you really don't know the love.
Just watching you, like I said, you and your daughters and your husband, it's such a beautiful family. You really are blessed.
Thank you for saying that.
And I wanted to segue there into the fact that you're a big supporter of women's rights.
Yeah, I mean, my eyes have been opened a lot after having children and not really realizing that women that have dealt with even fertility issues. I had girlfriends, that would have problems getting pregnant. I just never knew the right questions to ask. And I think it's easy for people to say, well, I'm pro-life and don't kill babies, but they don't know what they're talking about and what that means. There are not women out there that are deciding to have abortions at week 39. That's just not happening. And I think it's really sad that people try to switch the dialogue on that. And so through my personal experience and then talking to female friends that have gone through every scenario possible, it just really has opened really my eyes and heart to know and trust women to really take care and make their own decisions.
Hear, hear. So Yale, you are presently selling real estate, and you are also on the board of Equality California. What exactly does that mean?
So I sell real estate. I did in DC before I moved to LA. So I have my license and do it on the side in addition to working at Hatch. So those are kind of my two income jobs. The board of Equality California, I've been on now 5 years, which is very rewarding. They're doing a lot at the state level, but also at the national level right now with book banning and trans issues at school level and in school boards and all of that, especially even in California. Everyone thinks California is safe and super liberal, but there are still a lot of pockets in California where students are not being treated fairly, whether it is based on their orientation or even just banning books in libraries and, the Moms for Liberty going around to these school board meetings. So Equality California is doing a lot at the state level, but also helping Nevada with equality there, and then having a national presence as well with state laws dealing with education, medication, and there's so many things that the board and Equality California are doing. So it's an honor to be on the board there.
Well, thank you for doing that. And I don't understand this move to erase legitimate history, but I guess it falls in line with the movement towards falsifying news and facts and information. And you mentioned Sarah Huckabee, and was she the one, or was it Kellyanne Conway who said alternative facts?
That was Kellyanne. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Which alternative facts? Is there such a thing? Anyway, so thank you for being a member of that. That's so important to keep the books. This is now with what's going on to me with anti-Semitism. I feel some of these kids just aren't getting the education and don't even know what the Holocaust was. So if you don't know history, you certainly don't know how to avoid it in the present and in the future. And also, I wanted to know about inventing airplane seat covers. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So, I've always kind of been grossed out by airplane seats. When I lived in DC, I was thinking of an airplane seat cover that also served as a blanket. So my original invention was the Germ Freebie, which is a seat cover, and it has wings that serve as a blanket. So I started with the fabric version, and then about 5 years ago started with a disposable version, made of polypropylene. And that's more of what I do now. I'm pushing that. I partnered actually with Disney. It was a 2-year contract. So I had seat covers with Mickey on them, which was fun. But it's more just kind of a side thing. I've always had interest in inventing something and running with it, the production of that artwork. And I've really just kind of had to teach myself. But I thankfully had this before the pandemic. So when COVID happened, I had a lot of more piqued interest in the seat covers. It basically fits over the headrest like a fitted bed sheet, and then it drapes over your seat. The airlines never clean the seats. They're gross if you think about them. There's constant stories of, I don't know if you saw recently, there was like a lady peeing in the aisle because they wouldn't let her go to the bathroom, and people changing their kids' diapers on the seats. I mean, you try not to think about it when you sit on them, but then, yeah, it's pretty gross.
Wow. Well, that's enlightening. I'm going to have to get some of that. I'm going to have to get some of those before I get on a plane again.
I'll send you the link. It was pretty cool. We went to Florida recently to go on a Disney cruise, and there was a couple that was flying with my seat covers. And that was pretty neat because I've never been on a flight where I've seen people flying with my covers. I know they do, and I get photos all the time through Instagram, but it was the first time I'd been on a flight going to the bathroom and seeing someone sitting with my covers.
It's the best. It's the best. I actually had a fashion brand, and I was sitting at a restaurant one day, and one of my friends was wearing one of my blouses. A lady at another table said, "Hey, I have a blouse just like that." And I said, "Oh, you probably don't. It's custom. There's only a few of them." And she said, "Well, it's made by a woman named Deborah Drucker." And I said, "Oh, you actually have one of my blouses." So it was pretty
It's
exciting.
amazing. Yeah.
It's so great. It's so great to
Yeah.
see your work put to use and appreciated by others. So I want some of those. And, I know you've given us a lot of time today, and I really appreciate you. I know you're a busy man. And I want to ask you, is there anything that makes you feel hopeful about our future here in America?
I am hopeful, especially because our younger generation, even those that are younger than me, because I feel like I'm still young at heart, but I'm 43, so I'm not young. Not to be cheesy, but like, that's why I love that Taylor Swift is looked at so highly among all different types of people. We went to her concert in LA, and I saw the security, singing the song, as well as the people in front of us and to the side, and the mom and daughter combo, and just how diverse her following is, and just seeing, the really younger generation being so much more accepting of everyone. So that does give me hope. Unfortunately, all it takes is one shift in politics and, a country that can kind of drive things down for a while. But I am hopeful. And I think 2024 is going to be a long year, but hopefully it'll be a good year because, we definitely have two paths and two routes that our country especially can go. And if we go the negative route, it's going to be really, really difficult for us to recover.
Absolutely. So, Yale, I really appreciate your time here with us today, and you've given us so much of it. It was an honor, and I can't wait to meet you in person one day.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'm honored that you thought to even ask me to be on the podcast.
This episode of Deborahcratic was hosted by me, Deborah Drucker. It was produced by Lee Rocker with co-production and editing by Gideon Brower. Our amazing music was performed by Amy Nelson and Kathy Guthrie of Folk Uke. Be sure to rate and review this episode wherever you listen to podcasts. For more Deborahcratic, check out Deborahcratic.com and our Instagram at Deborahcratic. That's DEBORAH Cratic, like Democratic. Until next time.
Political is personal, so let's talk about it.